You're listening to the 14th Source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses. In the episode for Friday, November 12th, 2021.
November 12th, 2021. Do you know what happened 10 years ago in one day?
No.
So it's this week. So for those that know, this week is actually the 10th anniversary of the release of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The first release, not one of the 7 or 10 releases since then. And it's a big day, a big week, because once again, in the time-honored tradition, they've released a new version of Skyrim.
Right, the 10th anniversary edition.
10th anniversary edition.
Oh, boy.
It's just funny because I think it's harddrive.net that has been making jokes about, Bethesda decides to release the anniversary edition of the Switch release of Sky. Like, they just keep joking of another release of Skyrim. And once again, they've legitimately done it yet again.
It's not like Bethesda hasn't been working on stuff. And it's not like they haven't been working on Elder Scrolls stuff. The Elder Scrolls Online has launched since then. Apparently, it's been doing very well for them. I don't play, but I know people. I actually have students that very much enjoy that game. So good for them. And of course, Fallout 4 has come out since then. Mm-hmm. Fallout 76.
Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield are both in development.
Indeed, most likely Starfield first. That's actually, I read an interview today. I don't remember who it was with, but it was with an interview with Todd Howard, talking about after Skyrim, they kind of made the decision well, it's now or never if we're going to do the Starfield thing. And so basically what the interview told me was, hey, don't expect Elder Scrolls 6 anytime soon. But that's okay, because you know what? Video games are cool, and it will come out.
We don't need Elder Scrolls 6. Skyrim just came out, Dan.
Skyrim is an expansive role-playing experience, Andrew.
And maybe someday I'll finish it. I mean, what better time than on the anniversary to start playing and get halfway through for the third time?
How many versions have you purchased, Andrew?
Actually, just one.
Me too.
In the anniversary edition, because I bought. Well, actually, no. I should say
the HD version or something.
I bought the PlayStation 5, and on Steam, I bought the same whatever the
PlayStation 4. I'm guessing,
or PlayStation 4. Yeah, I don't know what the hell I have. So yeah, when they released it for the PS4, they did the special edition,
right?
The fancy. So I bought that, and then when I got frustrated, I bought it on Steam, and that's all. So I guess I bought it twice, but it was the same. It was just
same edition.
It was the same edition on a system shift, and because the anniversary edition isn't that much of a big step. I think for the PS5 and the Xbox Series One X 5000, I think they're doing a version for that uses fancierness,
4K assets and
or
stuff
something.
Like that, perhaps, yeah.
But the big thing is just the bundle now there's I think I can upgrade to the anniversary edition, and it comes with here's some of the favorite content that's come out, especially from the Creator Club stuff.
Where's the horse armor?
There's no. I don't think there's horse armor.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no horse armor.
But, I've only purchased one edition, and it was the release edition for my Xbox 360. I played it for something like 150 hours. I'm done with it. So the one thing I will say is, before I ever played it, I had friends who would play it all the time, and I even had a friend who, what did he call it? They'd found a mod on the PC version that was the random start location mod. Oh, cool.
All sorts of, and of course, some of it would just break the game, but it was just it's like Skyrim had become a roguelike for them.
Right. For a website called knowngriefers.com, I think it was, I wrote an article called even though I didn't play it on the PC, Top 5 Skyrim mods. Basically as me doing research and finding the most ridiculous mods out there. Replacing if you had arachnophobia, you could replace all the spiders with bears, which is just as horrifying.
Right.
Of course, it's the classic replacing all the dragons with Macho Man Randy Savage.
That's a pretty good one.
There was also another one that replaced, I think, the dragons with My Little Pony, which is pretty good as well. All good stuff. You know what? if anything, it's a monolith in the modding scene as well, which can't be ignored.
Yeah.
Especially considering like that stuff even went to consoles eventually. Not saying that that's the pinnacle, but like it's that important to that game and the community that it even got there, which is
right. And what you mean is
pretty impressive for those closed systems.
The mod stuff did, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So no, I just want to mention that.
Happy birthday, Skyrim.
10th birthday for Skyrim. And
to get this old with an arrow in the knee.
It was, it was going to become an adventurer, but then it took an arrow to the knee.
They were going to make Elder Scrolls 6. But.
And actually, it is really interesting. We always joke about companies that just recycle the same games over and over again, right. Capcom. But it's actually, what's funny is that, Bethesda's done Game of the Year editions. They've done repackages, but it's interesting to me how I guess it says something about how successful Skyrim was. How much it captured so many people's whatever that it was so popular that they knew they could release it again and again and people would buy it.
It was kind of a crossover success, right? One of those, like an RPG that for lack of a better word, normies could appreciate. It's kind of like the Final Fantasy VII of its day in its own way. It's like, hey, people that otherwise derided or looked down on JRPGs as boring games, like loved Final Fantasy VII, introduced a whole new audience to role-playing games, and Skyrim, I mean, you could argue Fallout 3 before it, and probably Oblivion before. Maybe not Oblivion, but Fallout 3 was a big success,
Right. I find that to me, and maybe part of its timing and also who I knew, but Skyrim was one that just, like, people were still playing, 5-6 years later.
Totally.
And again, some people who talk about Skyrim who are like, it's that same thing, like you said with Final Fantasy VII, like, wait, you play Skyrim? You're like, huh?
Wow. Yeah, you're playing Skyrim between the Madden releases? All right, fine. All right.
So anyway, just a fun thing.
Which is interesting because it doesn't have any online modes. It's not multiplayer. It doesn't have any competitive aspect to it. It's just a single player, open world game with dragons and
with dragons.
Roda.
Yeah, and as I discovered recently, because they were doing a special, the voice of, God, what's the dragon's name? The leader of the Grey Cloaks, spoiler, is voiced by the voice actor who does Mario, Luigi, and Wario. And
Charles Martinet, yeah.
Once I read that, I was like, because if you look at this guy's IMDb profile, it's like 90% Mario, right?
Yeah. That dude's Nintendo's been giving that dude very easy voice work for the last 30 years.
And they just have something like that, was it Parthenax? Like
something like that, yeah.
Oh, you're that dragon, huh?
Which like that mod has to be out there. It has to be. There's got to be like the internet. Those internet rules. There's got to be like an internet Skyrim rule. Like if you can think of it, there's a mod for it. Oh man! Speaking of things I'd like a mod for, I'd like to have a mod for my internet browser to just not show me anything news related with regard to NFTs anymore.
Oh, NFTs. So the thing that now apparently Andrew's so upset about that we have to talk about every 4 weeks.
Well, it's not that you're upset about it. Shit keeps happening.
Yeah, shit keeps happening. Well, I am upset about it.
That too.
so for NFTs, non-fungible tokens is a sophisticated gold brick scam that was introduced a year ago, I think, is when it started to initially gain some traction, and then we thought it kind of passed, and now it's back.
That's right. It was about a year ago. That's when it really started invading the art space. When I started seeing internet or web-based artists being propositioned.
So previously on a podcast for all intents and purposes. Right. So for those who don't, that aren't up with the cool terms, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are kind of a derivative of blockchains. I mean, it's a blockchain thing.
Yeah.
Something like cryptocurrency. And just to provide a little bit more background, blockchains are basically like a big ledger of transactions, right? And the initial thought was, we could use this to track magic fairy coins called bitcoins, right? Which made sense. That's what ledgers track. I get Sam, user number 1234 gave 50 bitcoins to user number Butthole Surfer. Cool.
Right. Decentralized banking in a way, like
is kind of how it was originally pitched.
Meaning there's no government oversight. Like it's all person to person, and it's all just kind of like, it's not stored anywhere in particular. It's a new economy. That's the promotion of it.
Well, there's this ledger that's being maintained by basically a network of users that are called miners. And the idea is that by offering to be part of the recording process of the ledger, they're awarded coins for their trouble. So it's a way you incentivize, instead of having big bank number 7, the idea is you have thousands of people all trying to be the ones recording the ledger, and you create systems to make that work, and then they get rewarded. And then suddenly, there's places where we have to have coal-fired power plants reactivate because there's so much of a draw for kilowatts to power Bitcoin miners.
It's like the first time I heard about not NFTs, but Bitcoin and not data mining, but Bitcoin mining was actually in the video game space, because it created the popularity of Bitcoin and mining, as you say. Literally caused a shortage of video cards, GPUs, and stuff like that. And
because apparently they're good at doing the process that is involved in the Bitcoin in the verification of the ledger process for Bitcoins for a blockchain.
And that's where you also heard about, like, you could basically kind of like rent out your computer overnight to do mining, basically. Rent out your GPU to do mining so that you could earn Bitcoin on the back end or something like that. Like exactly what you're saying. And that it just kind of grew from there.
So now we fast forward to NFTs. And so that really the idea here is that, as we discussed previously, is, someone said, well, instead of just this make-believe currency, what if we also had ledgers of transactions of things?
And attached to JPEG,
and what the thing that's being transacted is a little bit weird, and we've discussed it, we've made a lot of jokes about it, but really it's a receipt system that says someone got something, right? Is really what it is. So they always joke that, what if you went to the Louvre and someone said, well, do you want to buy the Mona Lisa? And you're like, well, yes. And say, okay, and they write down on a piece of paper, Dan bought the Mona Lisa for $10, and then they put it in a closet. And then when you go to get the Mona Lisa, they're like, whoa, you're stealing the Mona Lisa. Like, no, I just bought it. Look, there's a receipt. It's like, well, no, that receipt, that's not, you don't own the Mona Lisa.
You bought the receipt. Yeah.
You bought the receipt. You paid money for the receipt.
Yeah, here's a photograph.
And here's so there's a big thing. So but it is and it keeps going. And so there was that whole production of people that are minting NFTs where they have just whatever art, or artists saying, oh, should I mint NFTs? And then you get my favorite term, right clicker mentality, where people realize, well, because you can't, because of the nature of the web, you just right click, save the image.
Right, because the idea is that, like, you're creating digital art, for lack of a better word, digital products that you technically own, because, as you said, this blockchain ledger says that you own it. Even though because it's online, it must be a JPEG or some sort of image file, which means if you post it, anyone can right-click or screenshot it, and now they have it.
Right.
And at equitable quality for whatever you post, right? It's like it literally which that's the funny thing, not to go back to conversations from, however many podcasts ago, but like, isn't that kind of the opposite of what the internet was all about? Like, yes. Even like things like with Wikipedia and stuff, like, no, we don't own anything. It belongs to everybody. Like, let's share knowledge and information. But then, of course, what do you call it? Douchebags show up and ruin everything.
Well, and it's I think we mentioned last time, one of the big things is that, one of the whole advantages, the biggest advantage of digital distribution is easily, there's no product to print. There's no, thing to build. It's all, once you have the original, you can duplicate it essentially infinitely. And what something like an NFT is ostensibly trying to do is restrict that, or at least sort of. At least it's not a copy protection scheme. It's more the prestige of owning, right? That's what, and actually there's a whole thread that's, I use the term right clicker mentality because that came up from a NFT guy where it's, for context, it's a story of there's a restaurant in the UK where you can get gold flake steak and it's like 1,500 pounds. And someone said, well, I made it at home for 80 pounds. And it was just as good. And someone's like, oh, that's total right clicker mentality because, it's not, you're not paying for this gold flake steak. You're paying for the prestige of going to the restaurant, right? Which is a thing, right? There's that. And so that's really, if anything, what NFT has found is this niche of guys that want the prestige of owning something, even though you don't own it in the sense that you're preventing others from having it. You just own it in the sense that you get to say, I bought this thing.
Right. Your name is on it somewhere, right? It's like when a bar opens up and you pay $25 to put your name have your name engraved on a tile. Right. But even then, like it's such a what am I trying to say? It's such an insulated kind of world that I've seen people like take this to extremes where I haven't seen the specific accounts, but people basically screenshotting and quote tweeting accounts or subtweeting accounts on Twitter of like people in absolute earnestness in order to really assert ownership is like saying things like, we can get physical NFTs. I'm like, that's just art.
That's just the thing.
That's just the thing. Like,
that's a print.
Yeah. Like stop trying to pollute words that already exists, right? Like, it's just bizarre. But like, yeah, people so caught up in, and I don't mean to, I'm sure there are people in this, well, maybe I can be more confident and say that there aren't, but let's just, for the benefit of the doubt, say there are people that got caught up in this mess that are maybe earnest, that are maybe honest in their pursuit of collecting digital art. I'm skeptical. But but they get so lost in the culture of this very niche market that all of a sudden, what if we make like physical NFTs? That sounds dope, right? Like, well, yeah, go to Etsy.
Yeah, that's we've discovered that technology.
But we've talked about this.
Yeah, we have.
What's new?
So what's new? So there's actually a few new things that have happened. All of them flabbergasting.
Impossible, I say.
The first is that apparently now NFTs have creeped into gaming. And what I mean by that is that there are already a few people that were talking. We talked a little bit about how Steam and Epic both took different stances on NFT gaming, right? That Steam said, no, actually, we won't host, I guess. We won't have any game that uses NFTs. Where Epic said, you know what, we're going to think about it.
Right, yeah, we talked about that with the News Cruise episode from a few episodes ago.
And since then, now Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, and I think Square Enix. I'm not sure.
Yes, absolutely. Through like this all came out through earnings calls from what I could gather. Like it's just,
which is maybe why they're all happening right now, and that's
right.
But basically, all of these video major, AAA big time publishers have all said that they basically are like, oh, the NFTs are going to be the future of gaming, and it's something we're really going to look into.
Right. Which, of course, if you think about it as an earnings call, like you're talking to
investors.
Yeah, and of course they're always looking for the dumbest shit that's going on, and NFTs are at the top of their list at this point. So.
Well, and the one thing that I don't remember which one it was. Someone used the phrase "play to earn."
Yep. And that was I think Activision. Oof, I have to check my sources. We could. I mean, any of those companies we named it
could have said it. It's totally believable. And it's just this idea that like they're trying to further entrench games is like. Players can play to like earn money basically.
But the definition of that, like, so like, okay, you earned a sword, right? Mm-hmm. And like you own this video game sword, and they said like, oh, then you can take it into other games, but only if games offer that ability, right? It's not like something that is just endemic to programming. It's not like it automatically pops. You can't just pop a new game and say, I own this sword and have it show up.
Right. And so that's an interesting thing where, some people have already said like, oh yeah, the idea that you could have things that people could own in the game and stuff. Like, yeah, that's already a thing,
That's
because
true. Yeah.
Because video games are walled gardens right? Like the idea of, oh, you have the magic pony in Warcraft. That's been a thing for at least a decade, right?
Sure.
You have the hard to get, and honestly, I'd say when they introduced the first pay for mount, which was like 2010 or something, right? You dropped $15 and you got the Sparkle Pony, and you could ride the Sparkle Pony wherever you wanted.
But what if I wanted to pay Ethereum?
Well, but the idea, so like, because, and honestly, with all the phone games and everything else, like this is all something every game already does. Right. So the idea that we need a blockchain to do that is like, you're adding this thing that doesn't add any value to the process. And arguably, based on proof of work blockchain algorithms, you're actually you're creating carbon waste. You're using
a negative value. Yeah,
right.
I mean, especially if you think about the state of ownership of gaming at this of games, I should say at this point, like it actually is, even in addition to the carbon footprint and whatnot, just as an experience, it's a negative value. So okay, you play to earn a sword for your character, and you own that sword. Your name is in the blockchain. They cannot take that from you. But if it's like an MMO, some sort of online experience, some sort of like a continuing service kind of game, and then the servers go offline, like, okay, you own a sword to nothing. That has
no context. So I think there's two things there. One is the, when the game stops existing, then which has happened.
Absolutely.
Right? Has happened multiple times. People that paid money for tchotchkes in games, and the game went on. In fact, I think actually right now, Pathfinder Online is one that I think recently shut down. And it had a thing where people bought I don't even know what Pathfinder Online the game was. Everything it looks like it wasn't actually a game. It was just a hot mess. But people were able to buy, like Kickstarter people got premium tchotchkes and stuff. It's like, well, but what does that mean now that the game no longer exists? Similarly, the Harry Potter augmented reality game, the one that's like Pokemon Go, but
shutting down.
It's shutting down. So what about the people that got paid money for stuff in that?
Yeah,
it's gone. Right? It doesn't mean anything that you owned it. So I think that's one perspective. But I do think that the other perspective of like people say, well, within a game, you could trade it to other people, right? You could sell the magic tchotchke, and like that has also been done. That is done to this day. Games have figured out economies like that. I mean, Diablo 3 had a actual real money auction house, which they shut down.
Well, didn't it? Yeah,
they shut down because it was such a disaster.
Because people are terrible, it turns.
But I mean, honestly, when we were in, not high school, maybe undergrad, I remember I had friends who would play like EverQuest and then sell their character. Right. So the idea of people, and of course there's gold mining in World of Warcraft, all run out of like Chinese prisons.
Well, yeah, you can buy saves and stuff to games as well. Like, I don't want to work so hard, so
right. So saved it. The idea totally. Of, so like, again, another thing that, look what NFTs will do to gaming, like already done, can be done. And then of course, and I want to go to that third thing because I saw some indie gamers talking about this. Oh, you would take the thing from one game to another game. And like, that's another thing that could exist already if they wanted to. And guess what? No one wants, like, why does the makers of Destiny 2 want to implement some World of Warcraft shit in their game?
Right. The closest example I can think of is like, if you pre-order Dragon Age Origins, go into your Mass Effect 2 game and you can get the Dragon Age armor or some shit like that, right?
Right. And weirdly enough, that already happens without NFTs. So like, right. Crisis averted.
I don't want to say it's disturbing. It's expected, especially from big companies like Activision, EA, and Square Enix, to be dipping their toes into this. There's an interesting angle I was thinking. I think it was maybe the Giant Bomb podcast. Bring up an interesting idea that I don't know if I agree with it, but it does open the possibility, even though, like you said, with everything we've talked about, the possibility and the avenues already exist without the blockchain. But if you think of having certificates of ownership and being able to sell ownership to other people, this actually does kind of, you can see application less in terms of getting rich and more in the terms of actually, which I'm going to say this out loud and it sounds so fucking stupid because it's a digital world, but like selling used digital games, like you could, if with the blockchain, if you sold Final Fantasy VII Remake because you're done playing it to someone else and it was on the blockchain, like in theory, if Square had put their stamp on the blockchain, they could still get a cut, I guess. If you sold your copy to someone else, they would get some sort of small percentage.
Okay.
Like the used market existing on the blockchain, which like the used market is actually something that is very much rooted in not egalitarianism. It's not really a statement, but like you do what you want with your stuff, right? And it's like you don't have to bow to the original creators of whatever because it's your thing.
Okay, and let me wreck that. Can I wreck this idea?
Please do. No, I am not. One, I want to make clear, I'm not suggesting this is a good idea or something I want to happen, but it's an interesting idea, like that is actually outside of the realm of just people making get rich quick schemes.
Right. What I was going to say is that digital games are all played through some device, whether it be your PlayStation, which uses the Sony store or the whatever, or the Xbox, which uses the Microsoft store, or Steam, which uses the Steam store. Mm-hmm. You don't need the blockchain for that. You can do it anyway.
You already know who owns it, because of purchase history and shit.
Steam could, in fact, if you wanted this to happen with a blockchain, Steam would still have to implement it. And if they implemented it, they could do it without a blockchain, right? It's Steam. Because all of these digital game things are they're tied to an online storefront. Now you could say, well, what about for games that don't have an online storefront? Then you just copy it,
right?
Then you just copy it, right? And in fact, the NFTs, the blockchain isn't going to stop you from just copying it. All it lets you do is have the prestige of saying, but I own a copy of thing. But then that gets back to like, well, imagine your company X, I know your dansgames.com, like the idea that some guy on the blockchain says, I own a copy of your game. You're like, well, I don't care. Right. I'm dansgames.com. Don't give a shit if you think you own a copy.
That's the weird thing about all this. It's like the people really pushing NFTs. Part of it is like they're pushing a weird, like if you buy into this, then there's a prestige that's given to you that because you own an NFT. I'm like, there's no prestige, there's no glory, there's no benefit. You spent money on a thing that you literally can't even hold. I guess you could. You print out your JPEG.
That's not what you own. You own a note on the ledger.
Receipt, right? And like, it's just like I guess the thing that keeps surprising me as we keep coming back to this is that people are still getting wooed by this strange sense of glory and like I keep using the word prestige that comes with owning a digital thing because it's new and not traditional. Like you own nothing. It's like open up here. Hey Andrew, I got you a present, and like you open it up and like there's nothing in the box. I'm like, well, hey. You own it.
It's your nothing,
and you'll always have this moment.
Those ape images are really awful too. It's like someone created digital garbage pail kids with an obnoxious back end. But the one thing is, I said it earlier, I described it as a gold brick scam, and this is actually one that because there's other news that came up is that apparently I guess in one of these recent bills,
the IRS
is now going to start taxing basically crypto stuff, blockchain stuff.
This is actually glorious,
as a it's a financial instrument, so it's a capital gain if you sell it, right? And what's funny about it is there's a Twitter thread. I wish I don't know if I still have it. The link to it, but the guy basically said like, and in this story we discovered that the IRS may have inadvertently found a way to shut down on NFT scams, which is NFTs. So the gold brick scam is one of these confidence scams where the idea there's a whole series of them with different names. I think Pig in a Poke is one of them, but it's the idea of you're trying to sell someone garbage for some amount of money, but you have a confidant or a confederate who's going to basically convince the mark that it's worth far more than you're trying to sell it for. right? There's various ways to do it. There's a lot of stories of it. Like bricks of lead painted gold, and that's like, oh, that's really gold. And so you're convinced you're buying a brick of gold, but you're actually buying a brick of lead, stuff like that. But it always relies on you having that confederate that convinces the mark. And sometimes if you have multiple confederates, it's even better. So NFTs,
it's like the plant in the audience of the snake oil salesman.
Right.
Like, oh yeah. I couldn't walk yesterday. Yeah.
So the great part about NFTs is that, as people have highlighted, there are whole gold brick scams built into NFTs. Like, by their very nature, because here's the thing. You go out and you mint 100 NFTs of whatever garbage art you steal on the internet. And then
longjohncomic.com.
You go to sell. So yeah, D. Bethel goes to sell his 100 NFTs of Long John art.
Yep. Lots of butts.
And D. Bethel, realizing that he wants to scam it, goes and gets 10 other accounts on the blockchain and buys them from himself and then from each other, constantly raising the value. So like the first person buys it for 100. Second person's like, oh, that's worth it. I'm going to buy it for 500. The next person buys it for 1,000, except they're all D. Bethel. But no one knows that because it's just user number 77531. So, but the point is that then you go and say, look, I have these NFTs I'm selling. Look at all these other people that are buying them up. These are going to be worth a lot. So now you convince a mark to pay $5,000 to buy some of these, because he goes and looks at the history, which is part of the blockchain. The blockchain has become your confederate. And then this person goes and buys it for 5,000, and they're now part of your scam. Right? Because now the next person sees another guy that bought it for. So you've created this, multi-level marketing and pyramid schemes, but like it's this idea that it lets you do this very basic scam, and you don't even need friends. Right? It used to be you had to have friends. You don't even need them anymore. But the joke is that why they say the IRS may be, and we'll see how the IRS implements this, because it's tough. How do you implement this in the United States?
A decentralized economy, yeah.
But the joke is that, except now from the IRS perspective, every time one of your 10 Confederate accounts is buying the NFT, you have to pay you have to pay capital gains tax. Because you took your $100 thing and sold it for $500. That's $400 of capital gains. So it's the idea that suddenly this doesn't work as well because, although again, it depends on how they implement it. How do you find out who these people are?
Well, nothing proves that it's some sort of scam, laundering scam, more than when NFT people see that this provision in this law was coming out. And they're like, oh, this ruins everything. They're treating my exchanges like money now. I'm like, well, and after bragging that you made fucking $2 million off of NFTs, maybe you should be taxed on that, my friend. I don't know.
My favorite part about it is like, but were you trying to tell us the whole time that this was just like currency? It was a new money. Well,
right. So the government's like, hey, this is money. Yeah,
this is money. We're going to tax the shit out of it. It's the whole thing is just the further it gets, like every step further we get, it does really feel like, oh, like there is nothing legitimate about this.
But it's not going away.
It's not.
Why is it? And it's getting more of a foothold. Like it's to the point where like, are NFTs kind of here to stay? Is it going to be this weird? I mean, it's already kind of a niche market, but like it's going to be even more niche once it becomes more popular because it's going to be diluted and not as not as revolutionary, not as renegade as it used to be.
Well,
so.
And I will say the biggest comment, the tweet I saw that was just like, I think like the nail on the head for this is like, that cryptocurrency and NFTs are all garbage when the porn industry didn't buy into cryptocurrency. Like these guys gave us credit card transactions on the internet, right? Like it was
Blu-ray.
It was, well, technically they were HD DVD people, but but still just the idea that like the porn industry pushes a lot of technological stuff because guess what? Being able to discreetly look at naked people doing sex is a big business and they need technology to do it. So the fact you're not seeing, Pornhub now takes crypto. Actually, I hear they tried. They decided not to.
Right.
And the other thing is, my other comment I saw was that apparently, the furry community, the plushie and furry community is really big in basically patronizing arts. Right, like getting people to draw your persona or whatever. It's huge, and so they've actually created this like within their subculture. They have like this solid system patronage. That, they use a lot of Patreon and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. The fact that they're not on board with NFTs, like if it really is for the artist, I just laughed at the social the socially undesirable pornography and furries are demonstrative to me that maybe this crypto crap is just crap.
Yeah. You know what? I respect people more if they pay money to watch porn on the internet than exchanging NFTs, honestly. Please go watch naked people have sex with each other. It's, as long as it's consensual, it's good. But no one knows what the fuck is going on with NFTs, thereby none of it's consensual. So, actually, with Patreon, like a topic we might be talking about at a later date, we'll see how it goes, because with OnlyFans and Patreon, and not saying that they're all equitable, but like all these sort of like premium services where you pay creators to give you content, a lot of them have been cracking down on, what they call adult-oriented material or something like that. And if Patreon actually locks that down, then, because that's probably the biggest contender of all of them at this point, because OnlyFans had a big crackdown with their...
I believe they uncracked, though.
Yeah, they did. Because they realized that was 90% of their business.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're on a direct course to becoming a website that sells ceiling fans.
Indeed. So it'll be interesting, because that's the thing. Like you said, for lack of a better word, the porn industry rejected NFTs, but because they found a safe haven and better models to pay those creators. But what happens when those models or those providers shut them out because they're scared of credit card companies, right? That's something we'll kind of put on the radar as we go forward. There have been attempts to kind of crack down on that, but this, like you said, it's kind of always been backpedaled, except for like Tumblr, right? Which is not a pay for service, but they did do their best to kind of sweep away all the naughty stuff.
Well, you're right. There's the idea that pornography still faces the challenge of, credit card companies don't want them to use, like that's right. Not an acceptable service. So if like cryptocurrency and NFTs were all that they're cracked up to be, I feel like 5 years ago we would have seen all porno shift to just shift to pay with your Bitcoins, and they didn't. The only people that really did, drug dealers and weapons, ironmongers.
Yep. Yeah. International money launderers.
Right. Like that's who really likes it. But right. They also liked gold bricks and suitcases full of non-consecutive unmarked $20 bills.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like it all comes back to this fact this type of economy exists basically solely to do this, and then some 20-something dude bros with bachelor's degrees in economics are figured out like, hey, we could make some quick money on this. And then tell everybody else they can make money on this too, while not actually the case. So I guess I'm getting the vibe that we are not on board.
No. I mean, we haven't been.
I'm glad we checked in though, because things could have changed.
I'm just so excited to see how the United States government. It'll probably be a few years. I think it's like
of course,
2023 or something. But how they even want to try to because there isn't really there's not an easy way to do it, although maybe just the solution will be they're just gonna set up a crack commando team to monitor for this shit, and then just start taking people to town for tax evasion.
And what will be the new renegade economic model that comes out because NFTs and Bitcoin became too mainstream?
I feel like they just go back to what worked, just trading suitcases of gold.
Yeah.
Or just that's what the Swiss bank accounts are for, right? Like, what do they think they're going to put the Swiss out of business?
No, not today. Not today. So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can also find us on other social media, such as Twitter, which means you can find us at our respective handles. Andrew can be found at ProfoundDark. You can find me at DBethel. You can also find us on Instagram. You can find Andrew at ProfoundBrick and me and my work at DBethelComics.
While you're at our website, you can take a look at our YouTube page by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. There you'll find some videos from long, long ago.
We use 2 tracks of music for a show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4. They're both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod, the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music and more at his website at incompetech.fieldmusic.io, and that is all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 by attribution license.
If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use, whether it's something like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Either way, what would help us most would be to go to their storefront and leaving some sort of review, whether it's a text review or using their proprietary metric. Either way will help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. I don't want to end on a downer, Andrew, but we're going to have to.
Uh-oh.
Dean Stockwell.
Oh.
Dean Stockwell has left us, Andrew. Dean Stockwell is a monument of an actor, creative, and generally cool guy, it seems. It's great that a guy that seemed to just kind of like revel in the weird had such a long and storied career.
Mm-hmm.
What do we know Dean Stockwell from, Andrew?
We know him from trying to think what's the most obnoxious thing I can think of.
Oh, I've got some, but we'll get there.
I'm going to start with David Lynch's Blue Velvet, but wait.
And David Lynch's
Dune,
yeah.
Yes. Both where he co-starred with Kyle MacLachlan. So he was, in Dune he was Dr. Yui, and then in Blue Velvet, fuck that movie. So
he sang into a light bulb.
He did. And he was also in the Dunwich Horror.
Yes, he was.
He was in the Dunwich Horror where he played.
Rest in peace, Wilbur Whateley.
Wilbur Whateley.
I don't know. So it doesn't matter.
It's all make believe. We'll call it whatever we want.
However, he was in a show called The Quantum Leap.
He was also in Quantum Leap, which is my first real experience with Dean Stockwell, and I always really liked him. Even though he plays like a kind of a creep,
cantankerous, weird creep, like creepy uncle kind of thing.
Yeah, creepy uncle that's like a little bit too into the ladies,
right.
But somehow he still was he was a lovable character that and he had some really great moments. And that show, for all its silliness, was a fun show. So yeah, he did that. He was also in the rebooted Battlestar Galactica.
He was, yeah,
where he played John. No, he had Cavill. Well, he had two names, right? That's the reveal that his originally named John, but he changed his name to Cavill.
Spoilers.
And there he plays a character that's not nice and charming. He's actually a pretty hefty load of malice, which again speaks to the ability for him to always be Dean Stockwell, but to be like different Dean Stockwells, And I guess he's actually a child actor.
So I knew him from Quantum Leap. I ran into him in a completely different capacity because I'm also a fan of the classic rock musician Neil Young, who is this Canadian singer-songwriter weirdo. Much like, not Canadian, but definitely a weirdo, just much like Dean Stockwell. Neil Young, at some point, made a post-apocalyptic movie on his own dime called Human Highway that he directed and co-starred Dean Stockwell. But the big thing is that they were friends. So that was from 1982. One of Neil Young's classic albums is an album called After the Gold Rush. It's like one of the pinnacles of his career. It's the one that people say is a perfect album, that kind of stuff. I don't disagree. But he wrote that album because he was friends with Dean Stockwell. And Dean Stockwell and a writing partner of his, whose name I don't remember, wrote a screenplay for this weird not post-apocalyptic, but apocalyptic movie called After the Gold Rush. And so there's songs on that album that were written based on that screenplay, even though the screenplay was never produced. And I'd like to give you a look into Dean Stockwell's mind, because on the Wikipedia page for the album After the Gold Rush, it explains, and the script is lost. It doesn't exist anymore. So we don't know what the movie is. But it's described as a sort of end-of-the-world movie. And Dean Stockwell said of the script, and this gives you a look into the mind of a great creative weirdo. I was going to write a movie that was a personal Jungian self-discovery of the gnosis. It involved Kabbalah. It involved a lot of arcane stuff. I'm like, okay, he's a guy that liked to push the limits of the mind and perhaps taste, which also explains why he worked a lot with David Lynch. But either way, no matter how you know him, no matter how weird he was, no matter how off-putting his characters might have been, he was always fun to watch. And so, R.I.P. Dean Stockwell. I have his dates here, 1936 to 2021. Well done, my friend. So until you hop through time and space and inhabit other people's bodies, dear listeners, something Dean Stockwell would approve of. I'm D. Bethel, as far as I know.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast. So it's like it's all bubbly, and you get a little hint of the vaguest hint of flavor, right? Like, oh, is that like someone bottled this carbonated water next to a lemonade stand?
I call it an accident of flavor. We use 2 tracks of music for a show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4. They're both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod, the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
Oh, wait, no. You can find his music in more... Jesus. You can find his music and more at... You can find his music and more at his website at incompetech.fieldmusic.io, and that is all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 by attribution license.
I have his dates here, 1936 to 2021. Well done, my friend. So,
wow, that's my father's age.
So, call your...
I think. Yeah, I should call my father. Hey, did you hear Dean Stockwell died? You're only a year or two younger, Tim. You feel dead.